Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer on rational functions. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. Listen, if you've ever looked at equations with polynomials stacked on top of each other, like some giant intimidating mathematical fraction and felt, well, a little overwhelmed, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to completely demystify the seemingly complex landscape of rational functions. We're going to take what looks like abstract algebra and turn it into clear, visual maps of real-world behavior. It's going to be a fascinating journey from real-world mysteries straight to math mastery. Let's get into it.
So, picture this. Let's jump right in with a practical puzzle. Imagine you've got this massive mixing tank. It's currently holding 100 gallons of water, and 5 pounds of sugar are already mixed in there. Now we open a tap. Water starts pouring in at 10 gallons per minute. And at the exact same time, sugar is being dumped in at a rate of 1 pound per minute. The big question is, what is the concentration of sugar to water over time? Will it just keep getting sweeter and sweeter forever? Or is there a limit? This right here is exactly why we need mathematical models that go beyond your basic linear functions. I mean, linear functions are great. They can tell us how much water is in the tank, sure, but they kind of fall apart when we need to model the ratio of two completely different changing quantities.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with Section 1, the real-world rational function. Then Section 2, decoding arrow notation. Section 3, domains and invisible walls. Section 4, horizontal and slant asymptotes, and we'll wrap it all up with Section 5, graphing the function.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the real-world rational function.
Let's actually build the algebraic model for our mixing tank problem so we can see what this whole thing looks like on paper. To find the concentration, which we'll just call C of t, we need to divide the total sugar by the total water. Okay, so the sugar starts at 5 pounds and goes up by 1 pound every minute, right? So that's 5 plus t. The water starts at 100 gallons and goes up by 10 gallons a minute, so that's 100 plus 10t. We divide the sugar by the water. And notice what just happened here. We have our variable, t, sitting right there in the denominator. Calculating this ratio introduces a variable into the bottom of our fraction, and my friends, that is the very definition of a rational function. It's simply a quotient of two polynomials.
Moving right along to Section 2, decoding arrow notation.
Okay, so to truly understand how this function behaves, especially if we let that tap run for a really long time, we need to learn a little bit of mathematical shorthand. Think of it like a language translation guide. In math, we use arrows to map out what a function is doing as our inputs get infinitely close to specific values. When you see x approaches a with a tiny little minus sign next to it, it doesn't mean negative a. It actually means x is approaching a from the left, creeping up on it from smaller values. A little plus sign? That means sneaking up from the right. An arrow pointing to the infinity symbol means our input is just getting bigger and bigger forever. And when f of x, our output, has an arrow pointing to infinity, it means the graph is literally shooting straight up off the page, increasing without bound.
And that brings us to an absolutely crucial, foundational concept. As our inputs get closer and closer to certain danger zones, our output might just skyrocket to infinity or plunge all the way down to negative infinity. This creates what we call a vertical asymptote. I want you to think of a vertical asymptote like an invisible electric fence running straight up and down your graph. The curve of your line can get infinitely close to this fence. I'm talking closer than the width of a single hair, but it can never, ever cross it. Why? Well, because crossing it would mean breaking the fundamental laws of math by trying to divide by zero. And unless you want to create a mathematical black hole, we just don't do that.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, domains and invisible walls.
So now that we know what these invisible walls actually are, how do we find exactly where they sit on our map? Finding the domain of a rational function is basically just a game of protecting the denominator. Remember the golden rule, thou shalt not divide by zero. So to find our domain, we do 3 simple things. First, grab whatever expression is sitting in the denominator and just set it equal to 0. Second, flex those algebra skills and solve for x. Third, you declare that your domain is all real numbers in the universe, except those exact values you just found. Those x values, those are your danger zones.
But wait, hold on a second. Actually, not every danger zone in the denominator is a vertical asymptote. There's a brilliant distinction here between 2 types of breaks in our graph. If a factor causes the denominator to be 0 and it doesn't cancel out with anything in the numerator, boom, you've got a vertical asymptote, an uncrossable brick wall. But if a factor in the denominator identically matches and cancels out with a factor in the numerator, that creates what we call a removable discontinuity. Think of this not as a giant wall, but more like a missing puzzle piece or a tiny little pothole in the road. The graph just happily continues on its way. There's just one incredibly specific microscopic point missing from the journey.
All right, on to section 4, horizontal and slant asymptotes. We've looked at what happens when inputs approach those internal danger zones. But what happens at the extreme edges of our map? Like when our inputs get ridiculously huge or incredibly small. The whole trick here is simply comparing the degree, the highest exponent of the top to the degree of the bottom. And we have 3 strict rules for this. Case 1. If the bottom's degree is bigger, meaning the denominator is growing way faster than the numerator, the whole graph just flattens out at 0. The horizontal asymptote is y equals 0. Case 2. If the degrees are exactly the same, it's a tie. They're in a tug of war. So your horizontal asymptote is just the ratio of their leading coefficients. And case 3. If the top's degree is exactly 1 higher than the bottom's, well, it doesn't flatten out horizontally at all. It follows this cool diagonal path called a slant asymptote.
Let's bring this right back to our original sugar tank problem to see it in action. Remember our equation? C of t equals 5 plus t all over 100 plus 10t. Notice that both the top and the bottom have a highest power of 1. They're both linear. Since the degrees are equal, we use our equal degrees rule. We just take the ratio of the numbers in front of those variables. 1 on the top, 10 on the bottom. What does this mean in the real world? It means that if we leave that tap running for an infinite amount of time, the concentration of the tank will approach exactly 1/10 of a pound of sugar per gallon. That's its horizontal asymptote. It'll never quite reach it, but it's going to get infinitely close.
To really wrap our heads around this, what happens after just, say, 12 minutes? Well, if we plug 12 in for t, we get 17 over 220. Divide that out, and it's roughly 0.08 pounds per gallon. Now think about where we started. At 0 minutes, the concentration was 5 over 100, which is 0.05. So in just 12 minutes, the concentration climbed from 0.05 up to 0.08. You can literally see it steadily climbing upward, drawn like a magnet toward that invisible ceiling of 0.10. But because of that horizontal asymptote, we know for an absolute fact it will never exceed it.
Finally, let's put it all together in section 5, graphing the function.
We've got an amazing toolkit now, right? We've got arrow notation, vertical asymptotes, holes, and horizontal asymptotes. Let's use all of this to construct a step-by-step blueprint for graphing. When you're staring at a rational function and a blank piece of paper, just follow this checklist. And whatever you do, don't draw any curves yet. First, plug in 0 for x to find your y-intercept and plot that dot. Second, set the top, the numerator, equal to 0. That tells you exactly where your graph crosses the x-axis. Plot those intercepts. Third, use your denominator to draw in your dashed vertical walls, and compare those degrees to draw your dashed horizontal line. You are essentially building the scaffolding before you put up the actual building.
Okay, so your points are plotted and your dashed lines are up. How do you actually sketch the curves near those vertical walls? It's all about looking at the exponent or the multiplicity of the factors in the denominator. If a factor has an odd exponent, like a 1 or a 3, the graph acts like the opposite poles of a magnet. On one side of the vertical wall, it's going to shoot straight up to positive infinity, and on the other side, it'll plunge down to negative infinity. But if the factor has an even exponent, like a 2 or a 4, it creates this awesome volcano shape. The graph heads in the exact same direction on both sides. Either both sides shoot up together, or they both plunge down together.
And just like that, you have the complete map to graphing rational functions. You've learned how to find the zeros, sketch out those invisible boundaries, and trace the behavior all the way to infinity. But before we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a quick thought. We just saw how a rational function beautifully mapped out the physical, invisible limit of sugar in a mixing tank. As inputs got endlessly larger, they inevitably hit a mathematical ceiling. So, if rational functions can map out the invisible limits of mixing variables in the physical world, what unseen limits or asymptotes might be defining your own daily routines, your habits, or even your finances? Mathematics isn't just a bunch of rules on a page, it is quite literally the structure of the world around us. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I will see you all in the next explainer.